Hello, I'm Pat, an X-Way integration specialist. If you are here with me today, you're most likely willing to configure a custom connector. Great, that's exactly what I will help you to achieve today. Let's look at what we will achieve in this 4 minutes video today. First of all, we'll see how to configure a custom connector and how to add new configuration parameters and pass them in your API call. Let's get started. This is the Integration Builder homepage. Integration Builder is available as part of the AMPLIFY application integration offering. Let's go to the connectors page. There are a lot of existing cloud services. With more than 150 connectors, Integration Builder very likely has a connector you need. But if you don't see what you need, it's easy to add a new connector. We have created New York Times articles search connector. Now we will see how you can change the configuration of that connector. Now we have our connectors defined, and we are going to change configuration of this connector. We hover over article search and select configuration. We are presented with the same setup tab that we saw when we were creating this connector. What we are going to do is to provide a custom authentication method using API key. And we want this API key to be provided when a user instantiates this connector. In the configuration section, we click Add Configuration, blank, and we see a new row is added to the table. We call this new configuration parameter called API key. And as you can see, the key name is automatically created, and we will use this API.key name in the next step. And we define this as a text area. And we want this to be a required parameter when this connector is instantiated. We go to the Resource tab now, and the tool is smart enough to ask you to save these changes. We are going to modify this endpoint to pass the API key that the user provides when this connector is instantiated. We click Edit button, and we see Parameters table. These are the parameters which are part of the existing New York Times article search. The first step is we're going to change the Q parameter, which stands for query, to more meaningful name, which is query, which will be mapped to Q when this call is executed. And this is a string. We also want to pass API key, as I said, so we click Add Parameter, empty, and at the bottom of this table, we see a new entry. We use the API.key name that was created when we define a configuration parameter, and we say that this value comes from our configuration, and this is a string. And we call it API key. And it maps to a vendor query parameter, which is called API-key. And it is also a string, but in a query parameters. So we defined that, and we are almost done, but let's look at the simple response type that New York's article search returns. This is a sample JSON response that we would receive if we execute that API call. As you can see, the top level object is response, and underneath there is a docs, which is an array with a bunch of articles that meets your criteria. To simplify or minimize the data that we return to the users, we want to return just this array. And in order to do that, we add one more change in our connectors configuration. In the configuration section for this endpoint, we add response root key, which is response.docs. At this point, our configuration is completely defined. We save it. We save the whole connectors, and we are ready to test. Congratulations. Now you know how to configure your custom connector, add new configuration parameters, and pass them on your API call. This new connector could be shared with the rest of your company using AMPLIFY Unified Catalog. Please follow coming courses to know more about Integration Builder. The next one is how to instantiate and test a connector.